Zaldrizes buzdaris gosdau.
Okay, so in the first literal, 3 seconds of the trailer, we have Rhaenyra saying, "From my blood comes the prince that was promised." But also, before that, before we see her talking and she's holding that cat's paw dagger in the flame, revealing that Valyrian prophecy, before all that, we see these septas holding torches scattering about. This is obviously in King's Landing, this is in the Red Keep, and this is right before this scene happens, where Rhaenyra sneaks out in Bagavon clothes. Now, what's interesting is that prophecy on that dagger is kind of amazing. It's going to be used for something quite epic in this show, and ultimately it's used to kill the Night King. If you want more information on how I think this show will tie in with White Walkers, well, check out this video, which is linked down below in the description. Alright, now before I jump into the rest of the contents of this episode 4 promo for House of the Dragon Season 1, please do me 2 quick favors. The first one is slap a like on this video. Like goal is going to be 420. And then also, make sure you subscribe and turn those notifications all the way on. Lot 2 and 11 Spinal Tap reference. So that way you'll get notified every single time I either drop a video throughout the wait for House of the Dragon, or I drop a live stream every Sunday after the episode airs. Be sure to join me. I go live right after I finish watching. If you could slap a like and subscribe, that would be really amazing, and it help me combat YouTube literally from delisting my channel. I'm shadow banned. I don't show up in their algorithm at all, and really my videos stop getting views after 24 hours. So if you're a fan of my content, in order to help combat that, that's why I ask for you to leave a comment down below, subscribe, turn notifications on, and then lastly, slap a like on this video. Now, just backtracking a bit here, when we see that knife, those Valyrian glyphs are amazing. Like, we haven't really seen anything like that on the Game of Thrones TV show, except for kind of sort of in the later seasons. Like, these Valyrian glyphs in the books are way more of a thing. There's this thing called the King's Moon, like, not the show's version, right? But basically, when Euron shows up, he has this dude blow this massive horn known as Dragonbinder. And on Dragonbinder, later, we find out through Victarion's POV chapter and via this wizard that he picks up named Makoro, who's a fire priest, a slave to the Temple of her Lord. Literally, he's got tattoos on his face, and they change, and the flames dance, and they change colors. But anyway, we find out that the horn has Valyrian glyphs on it, and one of them says, "I am Dragonbinder." And this is really cool because when the horn is blown, the dude who blows it is one of Euron's mongrels, and he's got this bird, right, all the way across his chest, and then it starts to light a fire, starts to burn. And later on, Victarion hears that afterwards the dude was dissected and all of his insides were burned, like pretty much from the inside out. It's kind of similar what happens to Arya in the Fireworms when she comes back on the back of Balerion during the reign of King Jaehaerys I. But it's dope the way this show is utilizing this knife. They're adding more specialness to it because ultimately, yes, Viserys is wearing it. Ultimately, yes, it's used to take out the eye of one of his children, and ultimately it's used to try to kill Breanne. But the big thing that happens with it, and you probably remember this, is that Arya kills the Night King. So this show is adding to the specialty of that knife by having it involved in all these different events in the Game of Thrones TV show timeline, right? And then ultimately, the way that it's revealed, the way that the actual prophecy is revealed by lighting the knife, right, is amazing. Because if you'll notice, in the coals next to the knife is a dragon egg. So maybe the only way this prophecy could be revealed is if it's placed in a fire after a dragon has just hatched. The prince that was promised, and his would be the song of ice and fire. They're referring to Jon Snow. They're referring to Daenerys in the books, and maybe Jon Snow if he finally comes back to life. But the prophecy could go either way. It's not necessarily gender specific. They're referring to the prophecy of Azor Ahai. But right after that, we get a shot of Sir Otto, we get a shot of Daemon, and then we get a shot of Alicent. Then we get that line from Viserys, "The House of the Dragon will stand as one for the next generation," right? And then we see Rhaenyra sneaking past Balerion's skull to go out and meet Daemon on the Street of Silk. This is something that has been sort of like told many different ways in Fire and Blood, and ultimately something happens that gets Daemon kicked out of the kingdom. Like, we could look at the maturity warning for this episode and realize there's going to be strong sexual nudity and language and all that good adult stuff, and I can't wait to see some titties. But all that aside, this episode is going to be intense. And then the trailer kind of picks up. The crown of Jaehaerys I is placed on the head of Viserys, and we see Rhaenyra, and then we see Daemon entering the throne room, and all the while we're getting this voiceover. "Who will it be? The brother? The son of 3?" Like, it's a street performer. Basically, if you remember in the main TV show, at Joffrey's wedding, Joffrey had the War of the Five Kings being made fun of by these dwarf dudes. So, that's probably what's happening in the streets of the King's Landing. Whatever's going on in the royal court and whatever happening with the high lords and ladies of Westeros, the common people like to be entertained by it. So there's this street performer who's doing these crazy magic tricks that I'm going to talk about here in a second, but he's basically saying, who's going to be the because Daemon refused the king's help and conquered the Stepstones, and he mentions in this trailer he's named the King of the Narrow Sea. Conqueror of the Stepstones, which, if you're unaware, is basically the remnants of the shattered arm of Dorne, right? So there's this landmass that used to connect Dorne to Essos, and there's this something known as the Pact of Ice and Fire, where the Children of the Forest used magic to shatter the arm of Dorne to stop the First Men and everybody else from coming over and invading their lands, their sacred lands, right? So the Stepstones are these channel of islands in between there, and Daemon is named the king of that. They name me King of the Narrow Sea. Such a badass scene. He's holding Kragus Crabfeeder's hammer too, if y'all notice. And also, this puts Rhaenyra's entrance with the time-traveling boar zombie who killed Robert in the main Game of Thrones series. This makes Rhaenyra's entrance back into camp in episode 3 to shame. Daemon is coming back with a fresh cut, and potentially he has grayscale. Right? Like, I know that grayscale is like something that was a heavy theme in the main series, but also you got to realize it's a very real thing in this society. And for the most part, it looks as though Kragus' crab feeder's grayscale was like dormant. Right? So you remember how Shireen looked, how she just had that small patch of grayscale on her face and it's dormant and it's not really affecting her. She's not turning into a stone man. She's not going crazy. Her organs aren't solidifying and turning into stone, right? It's because she was able to get treated and they stopped the spread. Well, if you look at Kragus Crabfeeder, at the beginning of the episode, the grayscale is the exact same as it is at the end. And also, people who have active cases of grayscale are usually pushed out and sent to ruins of old places. Like in the show, we saw that they had the Bridge of Dreams, and that's where most of the stone men were sent. Like Jor was being threatened to send there in Game of Thrones Season 7 before Samwell ultimately came up and treated him. So, do I think Daemon has grayscale is what I'm getting at here? No. Even though he cut this dude in half and dragged his body, I think that Kragus Crabfeeder's grayscale is inactive. Maybe there's a small chance that Daemon could get it. Like, I made a video all the way back in 2021 where I was just thinking of different ways that Daemon could potentially survive his death. And one of the ways that I thought would be is if he survives the battle above the God's Eye and then ultimately floats down the river and is saved there for a couple of days, and Sheepstealer and Nettles come and, live with him for his last few days or his last few moments, right? Maybe, right? And this was mentioned in my chat, in my live stream that I did when I broke down the episode after episode 3 aired, right? Someone mentioned, what if Daemon gets grayscale, and that's part of the reason why he becomes so suicidal later? So basically connecting the dots here, Daemon willingly takes out Aemon One Eye and Vhagar in the battle above the God's Eye. So if that's the case, maybe the reason why he does that is because he has grayscale and he knows he's not going to live either. I've explained all the parts of that theory. You all let me know what you think about it down below in the comment section. Then at 26 seconds into the teaser, we get a shot of Rhaenyra at Storm's Inn, and that is going to be so crazy, right? We kind of have to see Storm's Inn because the season finale heavily deals with Storm's Inn. Spoiler warning, I've said this in literally every single video now. The season finale, like episode 9, will take place at Storm's Inn in what's known as the battle above Shipbreaker Bay, right? We're going to see Aemon One Eye on Vhagar face off against Lucerys on Arax, and it's going to be storming, and it's not going to end the way that we all hope, right? But we got a shot of that in this teaser. Like, I don't need to say this, but there's going to be someone down in the comments who goes, dude, you don't even know where the timeline is in this show. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. This is young Rhaenyra, so this is obviously not when the battle between Aemon and Lucerys goes down, because Lucerys isn't even born yet. Rhaenyra hasn't even been married, right? And then after that shot at Storm's Inn, we get, by the way, that's Boromund sitting next to Rhaenyra. We saw him at that joust with celebrating the birth of Prince Balon, who died, in the first episode, right? He's the one who walks up to Rhaenys and goes, hey, cousin, I would like your favor, the queen who never was. And she goes, okay, here, all the best of luck to you. And this little cunt goes, I don't really need it. This is this is kind of like a formal thing, right? This dude's son is more of a cunt than his father. His son Boros directly is related to the death of Lucerys, and then ultimately later on in this story, he ties in to even more cuntful things. But it's interesting. This teaser is bringing up that main thing. Rhaenyra and her father keep beefing, and this is what ultimately makes Rhaenyra sneak out to the Street of Silk to go meet up with Daemon. And we've seen, that scene in this teaser of their hands embracing, and then ultimately Daemon, who's wearing a hood, walks away and just leaves Rhaenyra there, and she's stranded, and she's probably gonna find her way into the arms of Criston Cole, or maybe she makes her way back to Daemon's bed and they're discovered. Because also in this teaser, we have Alicent saying, talking about the rumors and your daughter's not a deceitful one, but your brother, on the other hand, he probably, there probably may be some truth to these rumors. Then at about 38 seconds, we see Alicent shaking who I believe is Helaena. Aemon is the third child, so after Aegon III, after Aegon the II is born, then Helena's born, and the two of them end up getting married, but then after Helena's born, Aemon is born. And it looks as though Alicent is not pregnant currently, so she's holding Helaena. Aegon, maybe, it could be around the same size, it's hard to tell, but there's going to be another time jump most likely in this episode. She'll probably be pregnant with Aemon by the end, but the big time jump is coming up. All right, now the last couple of scenes that I want to talk about, because this video is getting to be well over 10 minutes and the trailer was only 1 minute long, but we see Rhaenyra running through the streets in the Vagabond clothes, so that confirms it's her. She looks like she's a bit frightened. This looks like this may be after or before her encounter with Daemon. Probably before, because she seems so scared and like she's probably never been out on the streets of King's Landing at nighttime. You got to realize that the main reason why she's doing what she's doing is because she wants to learn how to please a man, right? In the books, at least, she wants to learn how to please Criston Cole, and Daemon's like, well, the only way to do that is by, actually doing it. So she is taught by Daemon how to pleasure a man, and supposedly they're supposed to be fornicating, and then they're discovered at bed by Criston Cole. But if you'll notice, at the end of the trailer, we see Caraxes flying over a ship with Rhaenyra and Criston Cole. So that actually happens before Rhaenyra sneaks out on the Street of Silk. Like, Rhaenyra is taking a ship from King's Landing to Storm's End to go meet up with Boromund and potentially entertain some suitors, and then, when she makes her way back to King's Landing, that's when she has to fall out with her father. She probably refuses whoever is presented to her at Storm's End, and then, she ends up sneaking out later that night, and that's when Criston Cole brings in Daemon and throws him down in front of the king, and then, it's going to be a really interesting episode. But when King Viserys says, who is the source of these rumors? I want to take his eyes. That's actually super foreshadowing to when Aemon has his eye taken out for saying that Rhaenyra's children are strong boys or are bastards. So basically spreading a similar rumor of younger Rhaenyra fornicating, right, without being married, right? That's a big no-no. The person who's spreading those rumors, when Sir Otto's talking to Viserys says, I want to take his eyes. And that literally happens to his son, Viserys' son, Aemon, later on for talking shit about Rhaenyra's children. Lucerys takes his eye out. Okay, so then at 51 seconds into the teaser, we see this dude doing this awesome magic trick. Now, one thing you gotta realize is that in the books, when dragons are at the height of their power, when there's so many of them in Westeros like there are now, fire mages and anybody who's associated with that type of fire or blood magic has an increase in power. Like, they literally have a plus 10 in mana, right? Like, for instance, in the books, when Melisandre, if you listen to the audiobooks, you'll get that, right? Roy Dotrice says her name. Really fucking funny for, the first 3 books. But Melisandre, when she's at Dragonstone, she needs these tricks to conjure up potions, right? To make, spells and make her look more mystical. But when she's at the Wall, later on, after the dragons have already been born and brought back into the world, thanks to Daenerys, she's able to send out massive, spells and shit without using, any sort of enhancements. And also, when Tyrion is over in Essos, he's watching a very similar thing, like a street performer. And one of them is able to conjure a ladder of fire, climb up the ladder, and then jump off. And all of that is because fire is back in the world. Fire magic. The fire to the Song of Ice and Fire is very present. The ice is always sort of there, right? So with more dragons equals more magic. So this street performer is probably making a killing in King's Landing right now. And it looks as though whatever he does freaks Rhaenyra the hell out. Is this mushroom? I don't know. But what I do know is this is probably the guy who says, will it be the king? Or will it be his brother? Or his daughter, right? So the person who's doing that at the beginning is probably either this flame conjuring dude or someone right next to him. All of these scenes are pretty much linked. Well, of course, because they're from the same episode. Alright, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you could please slap a like on this video. Like goal is going to be 420. Thank you for watching, and thank you to every single member of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/huntsreviews. I love that.